What's up, beer lovers? I got a special treat for you tonight, and in fact, this is my first ever vertical tasting of a beer. Now, I know your question is, what's a vertical tasting? And for those of you that don't know, what it is when you taste the same beer that's different. And this can be a couple of different things. It can be if you've saved up a couple of different years worth of a particular beer. You'd only want to do this one with one that ages well, and then tasted the different vintages side by side in another night. Barley wines are really good for this. In this case, this vertical tasting will be the same beer, though one is barrel aged, aged in bourbon barrels, and the other one is just the regular version of it. Probably the reason I've never been able to do vertical tasting is I rarely am able to get both beers at the same time. Either I can get the barrel aged version or I can get the regular version. Rarely can I get them both at the same time. So tonight, special night for me, I was able to get both at the same time. So I'm going to crack them open. Both these beers have a Beer Advocate score of 86. Though the Imperial Stout has a 90 from the Bros, the barrel aged version is unranked by the Bros. So they're very similar in rankings, as they are the same beer they should be. Now, let's open them up, see how we like them. The non-barrel aged version of this beer is 9% alcohol by volume. The barrel aged version is 12, which tells me that they aren't exactly quite the same beer. And whether or not this qualifies as a true vertical tasting, I don't know. Pouring a second glass here for my wife, who also wants to participate in the vertical tasting. So she doesn't want to be on camera. Can't blame her. So anyway, the barrel aged version came in a nice wax top covered bottle. So anyway, both of these beers are Imperial Stouts. Of course, this one is barrel aged, this one is not. Let's start with the one that isn't barrel aged and just get a taste for the base beer. It's funny, I almost smell just a hint of bourbon in here, even though there isn't any, but I smell actually a lot of plum, a little bit of coffee, a little chocolate, a lot of those fairly typical dark malt smells that you get with the Russian Imperial Stouts or Imperial Stouts. And actually this one smells quite nice, very complex. There's a lot of roasted character and almost a hint of smoke when you taste this beer. It's on the verge of harsh. It's not incredibly smooth. It's very complex. It leaves a lot of lingering bitterness from the hops and the roasted malts that almost beg for you to take another sip. Though you know if you do take another sip, you're really going to want another sip. It's almost a touch over-bittered between the hops and the malts. But all in all, for a sit-down winter warmer, other than it's a little bit over-bittered for even my tastes, it's not half bad. But it is, like I said, on the verge of almost harsh. Now, when you barrel age it, let's see what happens. Definitely the bourbon smell is the predominant smell in the beer. It almost hides and obliterates all the other smells that were so prevalent in that beer. For whatever reason, there was just a hint of a kind of bourbony smell probably from the 9% alcohol, along with the roasted grains. And in the barrel aged version, that's the only smell. It's just alcohol and bourbon. Now, this beer also goes up in alcohol content to 12%, and that may play a part in that as well. But it is predominantly a bourbon and alcohol smell. Wow. It's remarkable how much smoother this is than that. The aging process, the oak, it adds a little woodiness and some tannins in there, but it also adds an incredible smoothness that, even though this is stronger in alcohol and you do get a little bit of that warming sensation, it just goes down so much smoother, easier. All the harsh, bitter notes are gone, though it has lost some of its complexity as well. There's not as many flavors and notes going on as well. They've been lost in the aging process. Though, fortunately, and one of my complaints with a lot of bourbon barrel aged beers is they're so over bourboned. This one isn't. This one is what I would expect, which is just a light hint of bourbon flavor. And I'll tell you what, if you have the choice between the two, go with the bourbon barrel aged. It's a much better beer, though it does lose some of its complexity. Other than that, cheers. Have a good night. Hope you get the chance to do a vertical tasting someday. I'm back. I wanted to give you my final thoughts on this vertical tasting. And they're this. This is an amazing experience. I hope you have the opportunity to do it. You can see the evolution of a beer firsthand. And while I found the Imperial Stout, the regular version, to be harsh but very complex, I found the barrel-aged version to be smooth and a lot less complex. And that holds true. And it's amazing to see the change in the beer of what 22 months in a bourbon barrel does to the beer. And I really do hope that you have the same opportunity as I do with any beer out there to do a vertical tasting on it and to see how a beer evolves over time or with a slight change in atmosphere. That being said, have a good night.